Has it really been 4 years since I first started doing Set Point? Indeed it has. What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you the 4-year anniversary special of Set Point. And as always, we have ourselves a jam-packed show as if we have a lot of volleyball to get into. As we actually have a guest coming on later on in the show, as Katey Thompson, former UC Santa Barbara women's volleyball player and head coach of Corona Del Mar boys volleyball, will be joining the show. And we had a lot of volleyball over the weekend in terms of the NCAA women's volleyball scene, as NC State upsetting number 5 Louisville. How about that Wolfpack? They are flying under the radar when it comes to everyone's radar. And the Citadel is still undefeated. Long Beach State had a big win over Hawaii in straight sets at the Pyramid. And we had Penn State upsetting Minnesota. And there was also a high school girls volleyball tournament in Arizona, the Nike tournament, which was won by another Northern California school. There's also the Redondo Power Classic that's this weekend as well. So hand me a volleyball. Set the net, because I'm about to serve you some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you the 4-year anniversary special of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday afternoon, Monday evening, wherever you are listening from. It is Monday. Either way, you have tuned in to episode 214 of Set Point, the 4-year anniversary special. And without any further delay, let us begin. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be on the air without IE Sports Radio providing the platform to go live on Spreaker. Please do follow IE Sports Radio on Twitter, now known as X, Instagram, and on TikTok at IE Sports Radio. You could also follow them on Facebook. Follow us on Facebook, as all you just have to do is type in the word IE, then sports, then radio in the search bar, like us, and then boom. That's how you're able to follow us on Facebook. We also have a website, www.iesportsradio.com, which has your latest sports news, your blog, your Hall of Fame, your Fans of the Month, your pages dedicated to each podcast, including this one, your community forum, and your merchandise shop. Because for the past 9 years and counting, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content, ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, such as Katey Thompson coming up, coaches, such as Katey Thompson coming up, and other authorized media personnel, to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. All the while, we've been continuing to be by the fans and for the fans. And with your help, I'm ready to basically give you all what you want and what you need in terms of that sports fix. And we're going to continue to do our thing, because IE Sports Radio is your direct feed for all that sports. And we thank you, the fans, for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. Have to give a shout to our sponsor, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, the single A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, it's low in sugar and high in protein. This is some of the best jerky you can get your hands on, and all you have to do is visit www.planetjerky.net and place your order. It's pretty darn good, by the way. Follow Planet Jerky on Instagram at Planet Jerky. And a huge shout out and thank you to our sponsor, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. The jerky that is on a whole other planet. And the way to follow Set Point on Twitter, now known as X, and on Instagram, Set Point is on X at set_point.ie, and on Instagram at set_point.ie_SR. And then I'm on Twitter or X at Teran Rodriguez1, which is where you can catch my main content, but you probably won't want to follow it just because I don't really post all things volleyball, but I digress. All right, on to the volleyball action, as we're actually going to shuffle up the order of everything for this show, as we're going to be bringing on Katey Thompson in about 22 minutes. So if you're listening live, that'll be at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. So we got to go over the AVCA / TaraFlex Top 25 Division I Women's Volleyball Rankings. So we'll start 25 all the way up to 21. 25 to 21 consists of a tie at 25, Auburn and Iowa State at 25, Ohio State at 24, Arizona State at 23, Kentucky at 22, and Houston at 21. 20 through 16 consists of Dayton at 20, Purdue at 19, Baylor at 18, Kansas at 17, and Minnesota at 16. 15 through 11 consists of Creighton at 15, Penn State at 14, Arkansas at 13, Tennessee at 12, and Georgia Tech at 11. 10 through 6 consists of BYU at 10, Florida at 9, Texas at 8, Pitt at 7, and Louisville at 6. 5 through 1 consists of Oregon at 5, Washington State at 4, Stanford at 3, Nebraska at 2, and your still number one team in the AVCA / TaraFlex / NCAA Division I Women's Volleyball Coaches Poll is Wisconsin. So no one really dropped out as Iowa State kind of reared its head back into the fray, as we had quite the busy week in Week 6 of the NCAA Women's Volleyball World. As it all started on Wednesday, as this was probably the big upset, or one of the big upsets right here. Texas A&M upset number 4 Florida in 5 sets. This one actually was flexed to ESPN. I think this was going to be on ESPNU, but then it got flexed to the mothership, aka ESPN, which was huge. That was a big win for Jamie Morrison's crew, and Texas A&M hadn't really had that big breakout win that they've been long yearning for in a long time. But Jamie Morrison, he's got the Aggies rolling. And that was a big win for Texas A&M, getting that SEC win and handing the Gators their first SEC loss. Now that really makes the SEC interesting, as you also have Tennessee that went undefeated this past weekend. Arkansas also had success on the weekend as well. So this SEC is becoming really interesting. It was looking like it was going to be Kentucky, Florida battling for the crown. Now it looks like it could be Tennessee and possibly Florida battling for the crown. Maybe Arkansas. You still have Kentucky in the fray, but they don't have Reagan Rutherford, which I'll be getting into in a little bit, which will be right now. It's actually a perfect segue to go into the next notable win that happened. It was number 23 Kentucky outlasting Georgia in 5 sets. They actually were up 2-0 in the match, and then Georgia nearly reverse swept them, but they outlasted them in set number 5, 15-13, as Kentucky wound up winning. They have not had Reagan Rutherford ever since the start of SEC play. So the last time Reagan Rutherford played was when Kentucky played Nebraska in that sweep, which Nebraska registered. So it was unfortunate for Kentucky to lose her. I don't know how long she's going to be out, and hopefully for Kentucky's sake, she could be back sooner rather than later. Because if you lose Reagan Rutherford, Kentucky is going to have a huge tough time competing in the SEC, because the SEC is actually more competitive. I mean, you saw what Tennessee did to them without Reagan Rutherford. LSU even took a set off of Kentucky, and heck, even Alabama, which is probably in the lowly depths of the SEC, they took a set off of Kentucky. So Kentucky really needs Reagan Rutherford back ASAP. So here's hoping she does make a speedy recovery. And I'm hoping it's not season ending like Alexis Stuckey, but I digress. Also on Friday, now this was lost in the sauce, as I mentioned on X, as well, I kind of forgot about this one as well, and I totally apologize to these fans. But I will just say, this was a huge win right here. This was Cal defeating Arizona in 4 sets. Now, you're probably thinking, what? That's not a huge win. But it is, because that is actually Cal's first conference win since the 2020 season, 2020-2021 season, where it was basically post-COVID, as that actually snapped a 57-match losing streak in conference, which, yeah, Cal was long overdue for a win, as I can imagine there was just a major sigh of relief breathed in breathed in and out by Cal and its fans. So that was a huge win for Cal, and they actually went the entire non-conference play undefeated, and then Stanford kind of rocked their core. And then, like I said last week, Utah was able to outlast Cal in a 5-set thriller, and then eventually, Cal was able to take down Arizona in 4 sets. Unfortunately for Cal, they couldn't follow that up as Arizona State, or number 25 Arizona State, narrowly escaped with a 5-set win against the Golden Bears. But at the very least, Cal no longer has that 57-match losing streak on their heads. So that's really good for them. And I'm happy for them, because nothing sucks worse than having a losing streak. But it is what it is at this point for Cal, and hopefully for their sake, this is kind of the turning point for them to key a turnaround going forward. Also on Friday, we had another losing streak get snapped, as we had Long Beach State, yes, the school that I know and love and that I love to attend quite a bit. They swept Hawaii on Friday, 25-22, 26-24, and 25-21 for its first sweep over the Rainbow Wahine since 1997. So it's 25 years since they last swept Hawaii. So you got to remember, Long Beach State had kind of a meh week last week. They went 5 with Cal Poly, wound up winning, and then they lost to Santa Barbara in 4 on its home floor for the first time since 2011, which was kind of a letdown right there, but it is what it is. But with this win actually helped Long Beach State quite a bit, because they actually jumped into the top 35 of the RPIs. And they actually have the best RPI of all Big West Conference teams, with Santa Barbara just 2 spots behind them. So a huge win for Tyler Hildebrand, as, again, I'm just going to throw this out there right now. I think Long Beach State, Santa Barbara, and Hawaii get into the NCAA tournament. Hawaii's had a fantastic season. Santa Barbara's had a fantastic season, and Long Beach State has the wins over Texas. Has the win over Texas. They have a win over Hawaii. They have a win over New Mexico State, which is a perennially good team. The Arizona win's kind of not looking all that great because of the loss to Cal and whatnot, but it is something to keep an eye on for. And then you never know what else could happen when it comes to the other teams, like Omaha. They do somewhat good in their conference, though in their Summit League, they haven't really been up to snuff. And then Alabama State, they always do good in their conference as well, so you have to make note of that too. Jumping over to Saturday, we had number 15 Penn State taking down number 13 Minnesota on the road in 4 sets. A very big win for Penn State, as Jess Maruzic was big time for the Nittany Lions. Also on Saturday, we had Iowa State upsetting number 18 Baylor in 5 sets, which was big time. And I had a feeling Iowa State was going to give Baylor a battle, just because you got to remember, Iowa State did take down Texas last year. And when it comes to playing these big girl teams, Iowa State is not afraid to get down and dirty against the big upper class teams like Baylor and whatnot. I mean, they still have to face the likes of Kansas and possibly Texas and BYU, but I think this was an impressive win. Though Baylor did get a little bit of revenge on Sunday as the Bears managed to take down Iowa State, the Cyclones, in straight sets on Sunday on ESPN for that matter. So still, it helped Iowa State get back into the top 25, which was huge, albeit they are sharing that spot with Auburn, but it is what it is. Speaking of Sunday was the big one. We had NC State. Yes, NC State, the Wolfpack, upsetting number 5 Louisville 25-19, 25-21, 22-25, and 25-15 on Sunday on their home floor. As, believe it or not, I did not know this, NC State only has 2 losses. They're kind of like Santa Barbara, but they are flying under the radar, as they're 13-2. They only have 1 conference loss. They're undefeated at home. And this win over Louisville, it's actually their first win over a top 5 opponent in program history, and it's only their second win over a nationally ranked opponent. in NC State's 47-year history. And the Wolfpack also held the Cardinals to a season-low 164, so NC State did really good in that match, and I was quite impressed. And that fourth set was quite the one-sided affair. I didn't think Louisville was going to lose by that much, and now this kind of paves the way for Georgia Tech Pitt being a barn burner for this upcoming weekend. Oh man, that's going to be fun. Speaking of ranked-on-ranked matches, we had number 7 Washington State taking down number 6 Oregon in Eugene in 4 sets. Now, I really wanted this one to be nationally televised, and rightfully so, because Washington State is so improved, and Oregon is as good as advertised with all of their talent that they have. Unfortunately, it was not nationally televised, and we had to see it on the Pac-12 network. Yeah, I don't approve. But the Cougars pulled out another big win, and as I mentioned before in the AVCA Top 25, due to Louisville's loss to NC State, Louisville got dropped from the top 5, and Washington State just cruised their way up to the top 5 as they are now number 4. Oregon, for their sake, thankfully did not drop, as Louisville was the I wouldn't say beneficiary, but they were the one that kind of took the bullet for Oregon as they wound up dropping quite a number of spots, while Oregon surprisingly went up. Also got to mention that Oregon took down Washington in 4 sets on Friday. That was kind of a concerning matchup going in, but honestly, Oregon, I knew they would handle Washington. Washington does have some dogs on their team, no pun intended, but I will say Oregon does have more bite to their team than they do quack. And I'm using too many puns, I know, but it is what it is at this point. Also on Sunday, and this is kind of the last notable matchup before I hit on the quick hits, we had Northwestern reverse sweeping number 17 Purdue. Now this was a rough weekend for Purdue as they actually lost a 5-set heartbreaker to number 2 Nebraska at home. And yes, I remembered Nebraska's name this time around, as unfortunately I couldn't remember them when I was going off on my little tangent of Wisconsin and Nebraska being on a collision course. But I will say, props to Northwestern on pulling out the win. It just goes to show that there are no easy matchups in that Big Ten conference. Heck, even Indiana gave Nebraska all that they could handle before the Huskers kind of pulled away. And also, Indiana did break a attendance record as they had, 2,400 something in their gymnasium. I don't know the exact number, but it was a program record of attendance for Indiana. So, hats off to Indiana for that. But Nebraska did go undefeated, which is why they're number 2. And then also, like I was just mentioning, Purdue went 0 for 2 this weekend, which is unfortunate just because Purdue, okay, I'll give them this. The Nebraska loss is not that bad. The fact that they even went 5 with Nebraska and almost pulled it out as Nebraska wound up winning that 5th set 15-13 was pretty impressive. Now, the reverse sweep to Northwestern, that's a little... I am very surprised by that. I was very surprised just because Northwestern also was coming off of a loss to Michigan State, but the fact that Northwestern showed some grit and resilience against Purdue, it's impressive. So, good job to Northwestern. And Purdue, they're just going to have to pick themselves up off the mat, dust themselves off, and just get back at it. Just because the Big Ten is it's any given night at this point. Just because I don't think that no one is going to roll over that easily. Even some of the worst teams could come ready to play, like Rutgers and Maryland and whatnot. Heck, remember the previous week, Iowa nearly upset Minnesota, but Minnesota just had just enough in the tank to pull out that win. And then some other notables from last week. We had number Texas beating number 9 BYU twice. I'm not surprised by that just because it's so tough to win in Gregory Gymnasium. And like I mentioned, BYU is good in Smith Fieldhouse, but could they rise to the occasion in Gregory Gymnasium? The answer, unfortunately, was no. And then we had number 24 Auburn sweeping Georgia on Sunday. Or no, actually, they won in 4 sets. I'm sorry. number 24 Auburn beat Georgia in 4 sets. It looked like it was going to be a sweep, but not really. As the Tigers split their week, they lost to number 16 Arkansas, or then number 16 Arkansas in straight sets, because Arkansas is just that good. But Auburn is kind of flying under the radar. They've got some stud players too, and they're deserving to be ranked. And they almost took down Florida, which, speaking of the devil, they actually faced them this week. Talk about a quick turnaround, as Auburn has to legit face Florida yet again. But we'll see what happens. This time, I want to say this one's going to be at Auburn, and I want to say I think I put it down that it was going to be. It was at Gainesville. At least I hope, according to the NCAA website. And if it lies to me, we're going to have problems. Anyway, so other notables before we head to this commercial break. The Citadel remained undefeated as they beat Western Carolina, and they outlasted Mercer this past week. As yesterday they almost got reverse swept, but Citadel had enough in the tank, as the Citadel is one of 3 teams that are still undefeated. The other 2 are Nebraska and Wisconsin. Yes. So you're probably wondering what's happened with Arizona State. Well, Arizona State fell to Stanford, which is no surprise. Stanford swept them. And speaking of Stanford, their top player, or one of their top players, Kendall Kipp, tied the school record for service aces with a whopping 8. Unfortunately, I jinxed her on Twitter. I said at this point I think she can get 10 because her serve is just so swift and so deadly that I think it's just so tough to control. I've seen it all the way back in high school. I've seen it all the way back in her high school days. It is such a tough serve. It's almost like a jump serve, but it just comes at you like a sniper. But for Kendall Kipp, that is quite the accomplishment for her, getting 8 aces. And I'm sorry if I jinxed you. I didn't mean to. Please forgive me, Kendall Kipp. Also, please forgive me, Oregon fans, if I jinxed your team, because I thought Washington State, Oregon was going to go 5 sets, and then Washington State had a comeback trick, and they wound up taking down Oregon in 4 sets. So, I'm sorry to Oregon fans. I didn't mean to jinx you. I'm sorry to Kendall Kipp. I didn't mean to jinx you. Sunday, I guess I was just not on my little correct prediction thingy-majig. But honestly, it was just a great week of volleyball. We had teams pulling off upsets, teams ending losing streaks, teams rising to the occasion in conference. It was just a very, very good week. And the best part is, we've got more NCAA women's volleyball to come. But that's going to be waiting on the other side of the show, as we're going to take ourselves a little bit of a commercial breaky break. When we come back, I'll be bringing on my guest, Katey Thompson, to discuss her volleyball career and her coaching career her volleyball career as a coach and an athlete. And I will be discussing some other things with her, as we'll probably be previewing a little bit of Corona Del Mar's team for this season. Regardless, you are listening to the 4-year anniversary of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hello, sports fans. It's me, your boy Larry B, and I want to walk you through the world of sports. No, not just the mainstream major TV deal type sports, although those are important too. But let me be your guide through your journey of all sports, from college to the pros, the minors, and everything in between. Each week, we are talking sports galore with true diehards just like you, from a hardcore fan's perspective that's sure to quench your thirst around leagues you may know all too well, and some you may even discover here. That's right, sports fans. If you love sports of all kinds, enjoy hearing amazing sports stories, and respect all sports, because you know how difficult any of them can be to play or compete in, then this is your show. Join me, your boy Larry B, on the defining moment each week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, and let the sports come to you.
Hello, ladies and sinners. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour, every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, this is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter, at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host, Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter, at any time. Be happy to reply. Always willing to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back to Set Point, the 4-year anniversary special here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. And ladies and gentlemen, we have ourselves a special guest. My guest is a former UC Santa Barbara women's volleyball player, where she helped the Gauchos lead them to the Big West Conference title, albeit it was a share, but hey, at least it was a conference title. She also helped Newport Harbor High School's girls volleyball team win a CIF championship in the highest division, and they also wound up winning a state championship that same year. And she currently is the head coach of Newport Harbor's rival, Corona Del Mar, which she had an outstanding season, taking the Sea Kings to the Division I finals. And she's just an all-around amazing person. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further delay, introducing the one, the only, Miss Katey Thompson. How you doing, Katey?
Hey, Teran. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be on here, and congrats on 4 years.
Thank you, Katey. It's an honor to have you, and I was wondering who was going to be the perfect guest to have, and I was thinking, well, since Santa Barbara's been having success, and Katey Thompson was a former player, why not have her as a guest? So, it works out perfectly.
Awesome.
So without any further delay, let us begin. But first and foremost, just so we're all clear on this, these are the thoughts and opinions of myself, Teran Rodriguez, and of Katey Thompson, and not the thoughts and opinions of IE Sports Radio, Corona Del Mar High School, Newport Harbor High School, UC Santa Barbara, Long Beach State, or any third or fourth party organizations. But with all that said and done, Katey, the floor is yours. Tell everyone who you are, what you do, and how you kind of got into volleyball.
All right. So I'm Katey Thompson, as Teran has said. Great opening. Thank you. So I am the high school coach at Corona Del Mar. I'm also a 6th grade teacher, and volleyball kind of got me to where I am today. So a little background is I actually started playing volleyball in 7th grade at Ensign. I had Steve Conti as my PE coach. So at the time, he was also, Corona Del Mar's men's volleyball coach. And so being 6 foot in 7th grade, he told me, hey, why don't you try out for volleyball? And I'm thinking, this is great. I play basketball, tennis. Let's go for it. So I ended up trying out for volleyball, and I got cut from the 7th grade team. And so being 6 foot in volleyball as a 13-year-old, very unlikely to get cut. So you can probably imagine how terrible I was at volleyball at that time. And so I went to Steve Conti, or at the time Mr. Conti, since he was my PE teacher, and I let him know what happened. And he actually said, hey, well, why don't you keep playing if you like it? So I wound up going to Orange County Volleyball Club, which is now Balboa Volleyball Club, and was doing clinics. So I ended up talking with Charlie Brand, and he said, why not try playing club? And I was on the 13 green, which, for those who don't know, it goes blue, white, red, orange, yellow, green, purple. So once again, it wasn't that great. And then 8th grade, I ended up trying out again, made the 8th grade team, made the blue team at club, and then went over to Newport Harbor, and kind of the rest is history with getting started. So definitely a different start, but great ending for where I am now.
Yes, and I do also gotta say, well, first and foremost, I kind of knew the story of that 7th grade team, and that must have been crushing. But the fact that you rose above that occasion is quite outstanding. As one of our other hosts on iSports Radio, Mike Pat, he says Katey Thompson equals winner, apparently. Well, unfortunately, the lead was kind of buried beneath that introduction. But but anyway, at Newport Harbor High School, you are coached by the legendary Dan Glenn, who is probably a Hall of Famer when it comes to California high school volleyball coaches. What was it like being coached by Dan Glenn, who is one of the toughest volleyball coaches out there, but he has produced lots of amazing players such as, Misty May, April Ross, you, and the list goes on and on.
Honestly, it's one of the reasons why I'm such a great volleyball player, or was a great volleyball player. The way that Dan Glenn coaches, it's not always just about the end result. A lot of it is about the process and how you get there and the lessons that you learn along the way. For instance, we had the infamous 7-minute mile, which I know so many people hated. So in order to make varsity, you not only had to be good at volleyball, but you had to be able to run a 7-minute mile and also do 30 double jumps. At the time in high school, I had zero idea why we're doing this. And of course, I was, teenage girl, so I complained about a lot of things. And I was like, why are we doing this? And I didn't understand until later on in life when it's like, yeah, you can be good at something, but you also need to learn how to work and how to train to get something, to attain something that you really want. So it was just kind of lessons like that. Another one is, being 15 minutes early everywhere you go, right? So practice starts at 2. You need to be there by 1:45. Anything after that, you're late. Anything before that, you're early. And those are some of those life values that really help not only athletes, but just anyone who's involved in the program. Those values really help as you progress through life. So that aspect was huge. We also, in high school, we were watching a ton of film. So really developing that volleyball IQ and understanding why we're doing something or seeing what's going on in the court. So that was a huge component of it, as well as, lifting and being a high school female volleyball player. No one really wants to lift at that moment. And that also just changed the trajectory of so many of our paths because now we were stronger. We were able to just, play consistently because, in high school and club, you're playing a lot of volleyball all the time, like tournaments, games, practicing for 3 to 4 hours each day. So it's just another way to help curb injuries. And then, ironically enough, the weirdest thing is after playing for Dan, so when I was in high school, Haley, Jaden, Tegan, they were all, running around the program. I think Brogan was probably just born, maybe my freshman year, sophomore year of high school. And now I get to coach Brogan. So he's been on my varsity team going on second year, third year in the program. So it's just funny how full circle this becomes.
I was about to say, now Brogan is on your team and he's doing great things. Now, also, when you were a player at Newport Harbor, and I mentioned it in the introduction, you wound up winning CIF your senior year. As your sophomore year, you came close, but that one team, Miracosta, which had no definition of losing anything, kind of tripped you up. And then junior year, everyone was just good, apparently, as you unfortunately fell to Long Beach Wilson. But during your senior year, you took down Los Alamitos in the section final, in the Division I final, and then you took down Dos Pueblos in the regional final, and then eventually Salinas in the state final. How rewarding was it to win that state championship and the Southern Section championship, especially against a rival such as Los Alamitos?
Yeah, so Los Alamitos was always our rival in the Sunset League. At the time, CDM was in a different league, and we played them once a year, so that was our big rival, but league rival was Los Alamitos, and I'm good friends with Emily Hartong, and so getting to battle against her in high school for multiple years, playing in the middle against each other, and also club, and then, going into the Big West because she went to Hawaii. So that was really fun to get to do that and, get to play in front of those big crowds in high school. And winning that CIF championship, it was really cool because I think Newport Harbor had quite a few teams go to the CIF final that year. I believe the same night was the boys water polo team was in CIF. That was interesting having the, fans divided. And then obviously huge winning that, then going to Dos Pueblos. So we ended up playing Dos Pueblos in that regional final, which was huge because we played them in the Santa Barbara tournament. It's a pretty legit tournament. I actually believe Newport Harbor just won that 2 weekends ago. So we ended up playing Dos Pueblos in that Santa Barbara tournament, and we got our butts kicked. I don't think we scored over 10 points in either of the sets. It was just bad. And then we go directly to CIF. And getting to go back to Dos Pueblos to play was amazing. And I think that's something that Newport Harbor does really well, is having such a great community and a great following, where I remember thinking we're playing at Dos Pueblos. They're not going to have, we're not going to have a ton of fans there. We're not, we'll have our usual friends and families who attend, but it's not going to be great for us. So the school, or I don't know if it was a school or the boosters, whoever it was, ended up getting buses for a ton of kids. So we actually matched the amount of fans that Dos Pueblos had. And the whole place was sold out because I remember I'd committed already to Santa Barbara, and Kathy Gregory actually had to be snuck in because there was no more room for anyone. And so getting to play in front of that crowd and against some of the, best volleyball players of our grade, that was huge. And it was such an accomplishment, especially how almost 30 days earlier they took it to us.
And yes, and I remember the Salinas matchup. Long story short, you kind of blew them away at UC Irvine, which, ironically enough, was one of Santa Barbara's rivals in Big West Conference play, which is actually perfect segue to go into your career at UC Santa Barbara. So let's fast forward to the senior year, as I know you're very busy and we don't want to make this too long. So you mentioned Emily Hartong. Did you know that when you all beat Hawaii at Hawaii that one year, your senior year, it actually snapped a 41 conference match winning streak for Hawaii, which, believe it or not, you're never going to believe the last team that beat Hawaii before you all was.
Oh, who was it?
New Mexico State, because Hawaii was all the way in the Mountain West Conference before joining the Big West. But regarding the win over Hawaii, how satisfying was it winning on the road against the juggernaut, which was Hawaii and was number 5 at the time, and beating kind of your friendly friend rival Emily Hartong?
It was unlike any other experience getting to play at Hawaii. They have a fantastic fan base, and they're so supportive, and just such a great volleyball culture out there. And it was great, too. I had 2 siblings who were on the island, one who went to University of Hawaii and another one that went to Hawaii Pacific University. And so it was kind of getting to play in front of some of my family, which was awesome. But I just remember the atmosphere was electric, and we were in that 5th set, and it's all you got to go big here, and we were fortunately able to get able to win that match. So it was definitely a huge battle that we had, and definitely one of my favorite matches to play in.
And you actually led the Gauchos in kills that night with 19, which was quite impressive. And you also had 10 block assists. So you had a double-double that night.
Yeah, I believe I earned, I think it was Offensive Player of the Week after that match. So it was honestly just one of those matches where your team's working really well together and you're able to diversify the offense and different things are open and being able to, manipulate shots or swings, roll shots, whatever it is, and being able to kind of keep them on their toes a little bit more.
Yeah, and honestly, your team had a few close losses as you opened up Big West Conference play with the loss to Long Beach State. You had a close loss against Arizona, and you were playing some really good teams. You played San Diego, you played Stanford, USC, which had Sammy Bricio, and I think they had Kalia Lanier, who are currently the top 2 kill leaders in USC women's volleyball history. So I imagine those teams that I just mentioned, along with your other non-conference schedule, helped prepare you for Big West Conference play, right?
Oh, absolutely. I remember, unfortunately, when we played Arizona, I believe we were up, I want to say 15 or 14, 11, 14, 12, in that location where you're like, okay, we're going to win this game. And I remember I rotated out to the back row because at the time we were running a 6-2, and we only needed one more point to win, and we ended up losing. I believe it was 16-14 we ended up losing, and that's just one of those losses that stick with you, and that feeling drives you. So although we lost, you don't lose the lesson. And I think that was one of the big character building moments that led us to that game against Hawaii.
Absolutely. And you eventually wound up winning at least a share of the Big West Conference. Unfortunately, Hawaii kind of got you back on your home floor. And also, unfortunately, and I say this loosely, Long Beach State kind of got you on the second to last match of the season, of the regular season, which at the time I was like, gosh dang it. Because at the time I was rooting for y'all, and I was hoping y'all were going to pull off that win over Long Beach, and it's like, dang it. Anyway, so after your illustrious volleyball career in terms of college, how did it feel knowing that your volleyball career was pretty much done because you weren't going to be playing in overseas and whatnot? All
right, so I ended up getting surgery on my knee. I tore my patella tendon my early junior year, and then played on that through my senior year. So I ended up getting surgery. And honestly, I was okay with finishing my career how it was. I thought that I accomplished everything that I wanted to. And so I have no regrets on how it ended. And I honestly, after that, didn't really think that I was going to coach volleyball either. I thought, volleyball was done for the time being, at least. Little to my surprise, it was clearly not done, because here we are. But, yeah, one day I think it was the summer after I graduated, and Alex Pennywell called me, and she said, hey, do you want to coach Harbor? We need another coach, because she had just been hired at Big West Conference.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I got started coaching at Newport Harbor.
Yes, and you eventually were the underclassmen coach, I think for Frostoff or JV, and you eventually found your way to Corona Del Mar High School, which at the time they needed a head coach after they had a little bit of a merry-go-round with Steve Conti having a long coaching career. Then Sam Stafford took over, then went back to Conti, then you took over. And your first season, I don't want to use this in a negative way, but it was kind of a rough year. I mean, it was a good year, but it was kind of a rough year. What can you say about your first year, and how did it feel being a head coach, coaching boys that are 16 through 18?
Yeah, so after I left coaching in Newport, I actually went down south and was teaching, and I started coaching boys club. And so that's how I kind of got started in coaching on the boys side. And that first year at CDM, I think I was hired middle of October, and which is usually when you're planning for season and your schedule's done. So jumping into that and meeting the boys, which, it's the year after the COVID hybrid year.
Mm-hmm.
And so the year prior, they hadn't really had too much volleyball. They had a couple games, but there was all those weird rules and stuff with testing for COVID. And then, so getting kind of into the habit of that and trying to instill a structure, because, after COVID, there was lack of structure in so many various aspects of not only sports, but also education, and also just having another coach, because I think at that time they'd had 2 to 3 maybe different coaches over the course of the year before. And so just trying to say, hey, this is what we're doing, but also not fighting the boys, because one of the biggest things is, especially with athletes, is getting them on your side and having them understand the reason why we're doing something, or, bringing them in to help build that culture, especially when it comes to high school athletics, because that's the best way to instill it, is by having those players have choice in it, especially when it's starting off. So that was definitely a big eye-opener that first year, and we had quite a few seniors that were very set in their ways, and trying to get them to understand the why was a little bit difficult, but I think by the end of season, all of them understood what our goal was and how we were mutually all working towards the same goal.
Excellent. And your second year as head coach for Corona Del Mar, it was a fantastic year as you advanced to the CIF finals. I'm just going to cut to the chase. You advanced to the CIF finals. You even took down the number 1 seed in your pool, because, as I spoke with Avery Drost in a past episode, CIF in the southern section in Division 1 had pool play as opposed to having just a bracket. So eventually you advanced to the finals, but you met a really good other opponent in Newport Harbor, which obviously Battle of the Bay, and it's I wouldn't say cutthroat, but it's a blood-boiling rivalry. So how tough was it losing to Newport Harbor? And tell us, what is it like either playing or coaching in a Battle of the Bay boys or girls volleyball match?
Okay. Obviously last year was fantastic. The boys definitely surpassed all of our expectations and how hard they worked. It definitely showed by getting to the CIF Division I championship, because even just being there is a huge accomplishment. Getting to play Newport Harbor, that's always a little difficult. I'm a little conflicted, not going to lie, whenever we play Newport, just because I love Newport. But it's also, boys volleyball, so I can differentiate between the two. But I'll start with getting to play in a Battle of the Bay. Playing in a Battle of the Bay is so awesome. You're playing against, the other side is everybody who's on your club team. It's all of your friends, people that you normally hang out with. And getting to play against them is just such an unreal experience. And it's such a big game in the terms of our community. So being in Newport or Corona Del Mar, it's like, you see people across the street, hey, good luck in the game this weekend, or, we're really rooting for you, or just everybody is so bought into that game, and it's just something that I think our community is known for, and getting to coach against it, or getting to coach during it, honestly, it's a little nerve-wracking. Coaching is quite different than playing. You don't have as much control over things, but it's also important to prepare your players as well. It's such an emotional match because it's not just volleyball. It's, playing for the pride in your community, playing for the bragging rights from your friends. And it's a unique experience that I wish more people could experience, honestly. But getting to coach in it, especially against, Andrew Mabry, who I've known for over a decade, and it's an overall really fun night and tradition.
Excellent. And that's, you probably said it best. And Andrew Mabry, if you're listening to this, you're still awesome even though you beat Katey. All right, but one last question before I let you go. When it comes to you coaching boys, what is that experience like coaching boys as opposed to a guy coach coaching girls and whatnot? I know that's a tricky question, but I'd like to know if you can answer that.
Yeah, honestly, when it comes to the athletes, it's a little bit of training up front and a little bit of helping them understand, and then this is from my high school team to the club teams I've coached. It's understanding, ways to refer to women, or talking about what, I am a female coach, you can't say certain things that you might say with your friends, or if there's male coaches around, and just having that understanding. But other than that, it's all of the boys have always been super respectful and really great. Some of it honestly comes from, there's certain coaches who, they refer to me as, the girl coach, rather than normally when it's that's Katey. So it's just weird things like that, but that was more so in my first year. Now going into my third year, it's been pretty awesome, and there hasn't been any, conflicts or issues that arise or any different treatment, which is pretty great. But I also know, too, it's pretty awesome when there's other coaches who come up to you and be like, hey, you're the girl, you're a girl coaching the guys team, and you're doing a great job. I'm hopeful that I can do that. I've had a couple of people say that, and that's pretty uplifting, and it's just reaffirming to I'm on the right path of what I'm doing, and letting other people know that, hey, anybody can coach whichever gender you want. You want to coach girls, coach girls. If you want to coach boys, coach boys. There's not any difference between the two as long as you're a good coach.
Well, I'm just going to say you are doing a fantastic job coaching, and honestly, you have shattered the gender barrier, and I could not be more proud of you as a friend. You are amazing, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Corona Del Mar can do this upcoming year with the likes of Sterling Foley, Brogan Glenn, Ryan Gant, and all those players that you return. So that is my interview with Katey Thompson. Katey, where could all these amazing people find you on social media, and where could they find Corona Del Mar boys volleyball on social media?
Our Corona Del Mar is just CDM HS boys volleyball. We're on Instagram, I think TikTok and Twitter, I believe. And then my Instagram is just Katey Thompson with Nose and Thompson. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Excellent. And I appreciate you coming on here. Just hang on for a minute so I can give you a proper goodbye, as I'll be taking a quick commercial break. When I come back, I'll be recapping the Nike tournament, the Nike High School Girls Volleyball Tournament in Arizona, and I'll be looking at Week 7 of the NCAA Women's Volleyball season. Don't go away. We'll be right back after this. You are listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
What's up, sports fans? You're listening to IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'm your favorite West Coast Wisconsinite, Bernie Bango, and if you're a cheesehead, come listen to my show, Big Cheese Sports, where we road trip around America's Dairyland, previewing, reviewing, predicting, debating, and digging into all that is Wisconsin sports at the college and pro levels. Join me on IE Sports Radio, Sundays at 1 p.m. Central Standard. Bernie out.
Well, what is up, Carolina Nation? This is John Felipe of the Carolina Cast, of course, the podcast of, by, and for the Carolinas, right here on IE Sports, your direct feed for all that is sports. And I'm reminding you to tune in Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern for the latest in Carolina sports, whether it's the Panthers that keep on pounding, the fly natures of the Hornets, the storming Hurricanes, the battle of the Blues with Duke and UNC, the fight of the Clemson Tigers, or the amazing atmosphere of any Carolina college. I'm talking App State, I'm talking ECU. I've got you covered. Once again, tune in for the Carolina Cast with me, John Felipe, Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Back with segment number 2 of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Huge thank you to Katey Thompson, head coach of Corona Del Mar Boys Volleyball and former UC Santa Barbara Gaucho and Newport Harbor Sailor, for being a guest on Set Point. It was awesome to have you on, and I couldn't think of anyone more perfect to have as a guest for the 4-year anniversary special. But with all that said and done, let us get on into the third segment of our show. So this past weekend, there was actually the Nike Tournament of Champions in Arizona. So I didn't really preview this, and it wasn't really as overly competitive as it has been in years past. Normally, the top teams are competing in that, but since that was right behind the Durango tournament in terms of weekends that it was being played on, honestly, I can imagine why none of the really big-time teams participated. Some notable teams that did participate were Sierra Canyon, Cornerstone Christian, which that is quite the turnaround, and Sierra Canyon obviously having partaken in the Durango tournament and having gotten third. Then there was also Beckman, which is flying under the radar in the southern section, but unfortunately they're in Division 3, but it's all good. And then there's St. Francis of Mountain View, the Northern California team, the top Northern California team. So, long story short, we had St. Francis of Mountain View winning the whole Nike Tournament of Champions in Arizona, as they took down Cornerstone Christian in 3 sets to become champions. Before that, St. Francis also had to beat Liberty of Arizona in 3 sets, and then Cornerstone Christian swept Sunrise Mountain of Arizona in straight sets. And then Sierra Canyon, unfortunately for them, they wound up winning the gold bracket, aka finishing 10th in the tournament. They actually lost to their league rival Marymount. So I don't know if that was on the account of Sierra Canyon not playing their starters, but Marymount actually no, Sierra Canyon forfeited. So okay, I don't understand why, but I guess Marymount was champion. Maybe they were co-champions. See, here's the thing. Marymount and Sierra Canyon are in the same league, and it makes zero sense to play in a tournament. However, I've seen other teams in other leagues in the Southern section play in that tournament, whether it's consolation or whether it's in the lower brackets. So, honestly, I kind of don't agree with Sierra Canyon forfeiting. I hope for their sake it doesn't count toward their record, because if it does, then that's stupid. That the Nike Arizona tournament would basically just say, "Oh, Sierra Canyon forfeits because they don't want to play against a league rival. Marymount, you're 9th place champion. Congratulations." And if CIF decides to use that against Sierra Canyon in terms of like seeding and whatnot, then that's kind of That's kind of asinine, if you ask me. I don't know if I should say that word. I don't know if asinine's the correct word to use, but honestly, that's a little messed up. But in all honesty, Sierra Canyon and Marymount are facing one another in the near future. So, in a league game, which truly is going to matter, and that's going to be best 3 out of 5. These matchups are best 2 out of 3. And I imagine Sierra Canyon was just playing so much volleyball, and they didn't want to lose any players, and they just did not want to play a league rival when it could be avoided. So all in all, that's kind of the gist of the Nike Tournament of Champions. I kind of expected a little better from Sierra Canyon, but they did get an interesting draw. They did get Sacred Heart Prep from Northern California, which they lost that 1-2, which it's totally understandable. You don't really know much about these Northern California teams and whatnot, but all in all, that was kind of the shocker right there, because that eventually opened the door for Liberty of Arizona to eventually, advance to the semifinals. And then eventually Liberty lost to St. Francis, which eventually became the tournament champion. But honestly, I don't think that not winning the Tournament of Champions is anything Sierra Canyon's going to lose sleep over. You do have to remember that they are the reigning CIF Southern Section Division I champion, and they're still going to be a very good team and a tough out for any team in that tournament. And you got to remember, just like in the boys volleyball side of things, the girls volleyball in the CIF Southern Section Division I playoffs uses pool play. And if Sierra Canyon plays its cards right, it could possibly get at least 1, maybe 2 home games, and most of their team is eligible, so do not sleep on those Trailblazers. Anyway, so that's enough about some high school girls volleyball. I guess I should also mention that Huntington Beach nearly was upset. Yes, the Huntington Beach that finished top 8 in the Durango tournament, as they almost lost to Edison of Huntington Beach in a league game, but the Oilers managed to outlast the Chargers in 5 sets. So last week was a little week for the Oilers, as Corona Del Mar gave them a little bit of a scare, but Huntington Beach swept them. And then Huntington Beach had their senior night, and then they got off to a slow start, but eventually won that first set and wound up sweeping Laguna Beach. So Huntington Beach should be back on track, and I still think they're going to get into that Division I bracket. This week is a big week for Huntington Beach, as tomorrow, as of this recording, they're playing Los Alamitos. So they face Los Alamitos, which is head coached by Dave Huber, and obviously Huntington Beach being coached by former set point guest Craig Pizzanti. Those two will be clashing against one another on Tuesday, October 3rd in a barn burner. And unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to see that because I have to PA announce elsewhere. But it's all good. But that is basically going to do it for for high school right there. I guess I should also mention that I went and saw Mater Dei against Santa Margarita, and Mater Dei took care of business. I will say I'm very surprised Mater Dei did not have a Durango tournament, as the Monarchs just looked really good. Layli Ostavar and Samara Gordon were just both amazing. And honestly, Mater Dei was a machine out there. I'm blanking on the one girl that is going to what was it, San Diego? The one girl that's going to San Diego, she was also good. Isabella Clark. I was blanking on her name because she has a different number. I don't know what happened to her original number 2, but she was wearing number 27. Fun Snapple fact right there. But the players that I just mentioned, Isabella Clark, Samara Gordon, and Laylee Ostovar, that is a tough front 3. And then you also have Emma Kingston, a freshman middle blocker who is a whopping 6'5". She is starting to continue to get better as well. And soon, Ava Ostovar, who's committed to UC Santa Barbara, she will be back in the Mater Dei starting lineup in the 6-2 rotation. So I imagine Mater Dei is going to be getting better and better once they get Ava Ostovar back in that starting rotation. Because she did hurt her ankle against Redondo Union all the way back in the beginning of September, and now she is on her way back. She's going to be cleared to practice eventually, but she probably doesn't want to be rushed back until when it truly needs to be. There's only 2 more weeks of the regular season in the CIF Southern section, but I digress. All right, that is enough for some high school girls volleyball. So now let's get on into the NCAA Women's Volleyball Week 7 preview. So I kind of had to slap this together very quick and very dirty. Let's just jump to Thursday and Friday for that matter. Number 17 Kansas at number 10 Texas. So Kansas had themselves a very good weekend, and I forgot to mention this in my Week 6 recap. Kansas wound up taking down Houston twice last week. Now they have to hit the road to Gregory Gymnasium to take on Texas. Now, here's my thing for Kansas. Can they win at least one time against Gregory Gymnasium? And I'm a fool because I copy-pasted what the NCAA Women's Volleyball website showed. Texas is not number 10, they're number 8, so NCAA Women's Volleyball website, you might want to fix that. Anyway, so number 17 Kansas is playing number 8 Texas, and Texas is still that team, and it's been a while since Texas has lost a conference game at home in Gregory Gymnasium. So for Texas State, I feel them beating BYU is an indicator that they might be back in terms of their women's volleyball team struggling in the early bits of the preseason. I think Texas is really going to take it to teams. If they could beat BYU, I would say somewhat convincingly. I mean, there were moments where Texas looked strong. There were moments where BYU looked strong. And then it looked like the Texas offense was just humming like a happy man on a nice, bright, and sunny day. And then, obviously, there were times where the Texas defense kind of shined. But in all honesty, I really think Texas is going to show that. I think they're going to beat Kansas, but I think Kansas is going to make it competitive. I don't want to say Kansas stinks compared to Texas, but Texas is just too good. And playing in Gregory Gymnasium, it's very tough. So jumping over to all of Friday's top matchups, we have number 3 Stanford at Washington. Now, I think this is a sneaky good matchup just because Stanford obviously has a date with number 4 Washington State, but Washington, you have to face those guys as well, and you don't want to underestimate Washington. Washington is a very good program, and they may not have the studs like they've had in the past, like LMA Powell, but I will just say, I think that, and Maren Grote for that matter, just to name a couple, but I will just say Washington has some scrappers on that team, and you never want to underestimate a team with May Pertovsky. I think she's solid. So I think for Washington, I expect them to give Stanford a little bit of a battle, but just like the Oregon match, I feel Washington is going to come out falling a little bit short. But don't write off Washington just yet. Just like how you don't want to write off Geno Smith, because they won't write back. Anyway, also on Friday we have another notable matchup. Tied for number 25 Auburn, taking on number 9 Florida. This one will be in Gainesville, contrary to popular belief, as yeah, it's round 2 between Auburn and Florida. Now, here's my thing. Florida has looked a little if you ask me. And yes, this will be in Gainesville. So, back to Florida. They've looked a little ever since Alexis Stuckey's injury, as Kennedy Muff has done a good job in terms of filling in the position for her, but she is honestly no Alexis Stuckey. You cannot replace Alexis Stuckey just like that. So, in all honesty, for what's their face, for Florida, and there I go again, blanking again. For Florida, I'll just say this. I feel they're going to win. I feel they're going to win a little bit more convincingly. Winning on the road is so tough. However, Auburn has that eye of the tiger in them. And Auburn is not to be taken lightly. I don't think Auburn's going to roll over that easily. I don't think Auburn is bad for being tied for 25th. I think they're pretty darn good. But if Auburn wants to really prove itself as an SEC contender, they're kind of going to need to beat a team that is ranked above them, whether it's Kentucky, whether it's Arkansas, whether it's Tennessee, or whether it's Florida. They're going to have to really show that they're all bite and no roar or meow and whatnot. So I feel Auburn can be competitive against Florida, but playing in Gainesville is so tough. And you can imagine that there are going to be quite a number of fans at this event. Also on Friday, as we jump to the ACC, we have number 11 Georgia Tech taking on number 7 Pitt. All right, who would have guessed that Louisville was not going to be undefeated and Pitt and Georgia Tech were going to be undefeated as of this point in terms of ACC play? Well, certainly not me. As Georgia Tech, they almost lost to Wake Forest. They kind of had a little bit of a scare from Wake Forest, but they eventually pulled it out in 5 sets. And then Pitt, obviously, they're looking more and more solid. They did, however, and this is so unfortunate for Pitt, and I feel so heartbroken for this player. They did lose one of their top middle blockers to injury, that being Bree Kelly to injury, as she just had season-ending injury, or she just confirmed that she is out with a season-ending injury, and she's going to miss the rest of the season. So that is so tough. The good news is, however, is that they have another middle blocker who's really good, Emma Monks. Now, what does that mean for Pitt altogether? Well, it means it kind of means that Chiamaka Nwakolo, if I mispronounced that, I'm sorry. It means that Chiamaka is going to have to shift into the middle and be a part of that middle rotation. Unless Pitt wants to try their luck with Emma Monks and Rachel Jepson as the middle rotation. But I don't think that's going to be on the agenda for Dan Fisher. I think it's going to be Chiamaka and Emma Monks. And honestly, Pitt still has some heavy hitters like Claire Bayless and Olivia Babcock. Tori Stafford is doing wonders. And you also can't forget about Juliana Dalton, who is having herself a comeback season. And Valerie Vasquez-Gomez, do not forget about her. Never forget about her. I think Pitt is going to be just fine, but losing Bree Kelly really hurts. And then for Georgia Tech, this is kind of the big game where you have to prove yourself. If Georgia Tech wins this, they are indeed for real. Like, for real. I mean, yes, Georgia Tech has that one loss to Georgia, which, yeah, I understand. Georgia Tech, that's a rivalry match. You don't want to ever overlook that. But I will just say, I kind of expected a little better from Georgia Tech that match. But I had a feeling that was going to be a sneaky good matchup. So all in all, for Georgia Tech, this is going to be a fun weekend and a weekend to really prove themselves, and I hope they can really rise to the occasion. Because like most of the most recent battles between Georgia Tech and Pitt, it always comes down to the wire and whatnot. Also on Friday, we have two sneaky good matchups. One coming from the Big Ten, being Indiana at Penn State, number 14 Penn State for that matter. All right, so Indiana, I think they're so much more improved. I saw them against Washington. That is a solid team. They really serve tough. I'm just going to say that right now. They serve pretty darn tough for a team that is being vastly overlooked. And I give a lot of credit to Steve Aird, their head coach. That team is way better than what records show and whatnot. Now, however, they have to travel to Rec Hall to take on the Nittany Lions, which I really think that's going to be a tough matchup. But if Indiana can be competitive against Nebraska, I think Indiana can be competitive against anybody. And that includes Penn State. Now, Penn State, obviously, coming off of that big win over Minnesota, that is pretty darn good. However, they just don't want to walk into this matchup thinking, oh, we're facing Indiana. We're going to mop these players up like a bad floor. No. Indiana's going to come raring to go. But in all honesty, I would pick Penn State if I were a betting man. But do not sleep on those Hoosiers. And then also on Friday, we have another sneaky good matchup. USC at number 23, Arizona State. All right, so believe it or not, USC has won 8 in a row. Remember how they were once 1-3, and I was just facepalming and wondering, why is this team playing like the Raiders? Well, they're actually playing pretty darn good volleyball. Yes, it's not really against the most glamorous opponents, but they do have good wins over Purdue and UCLA. They have a nice 5-set win over Utah, which wasn't bad, which Utah actually swept UCLA. And then USC also beat Colorado in their dig pink matchup. But now they got to hit the road to Tempe to take on Arizona State, which Arizona State was kind of humbled last week, as in addition to losing to Stanford, they had to go 5 with Cal. But now they have a chance to kind of right the ship and take down a receiving votes USC team. Now here's the thing for USC. If USC wins, I'll just say this. They kind of deserve to be ranked. Maybe. Hence the word maybe. I'm not going to say they ultimately deserve to be ranked, because Arizona State has been playing some darn good volleyball, and their only loss is to Stanford, which is totally reasonable. And it's on the road. But I digress. But I will also say, Arizona State and USC, don't be surprised if both teams make the NCAA tournament. It's just all about them finishing strong. Like, USC just can't afford to have any bad losses. And same can be said for Arizona State. They just can't afford to trip up toward the finish line, because if you have anywhere near some bad losses, that could affect you being an at-large. Because let's be honest, Arizona State and USC are not winning the Pac-12. That honor is probably going to go to Stanford, Washington State, or Oregon. Jumping over to Saturday, we have number 24 Ohio State at number 14 Penn State. Look, I'm a firm believer of rivalry matchups are the most entertaining thing in volleyball. But I don't really... Look, here's the thing. I don't want to say Ohio State is going to legit get stomped on, but when you look at it on paper, Penn State kind of outdoes Ohio State in most of the categories. They kind of check off more of the boxes than Ohio State does. And again, I hate to rag on Jen Flynn Oldenburg, because I like her. However, Penn State on paper looks so legitimate. But this is why you play the game. You could look really good on paper, but then when the two teams face one another, anything could happen. But I would imagine Penn State is not going to lose this one, especially with Mac Pedraza facing her former team. But hey, crazier things have happened before in the past. Speaking of Big Ten matchups, we have another sneaky good matchup. Iowa at number 19 Purdue. Alright, so I was told by friend of the show, Robert Evans, a nice, knowledgeable volleyball fan, I guess I could call him that. He told me that Iowa is going to have their best season in a while. I'm actually a firm believer of that, just because Iowa nearly beat Minnesota. And honestly, Iowa is... I wouldn't say they're flying under the radar, but they're sneaky good. And you got to remember, Purdue had a little bit of a meh weekend last week. Because, yes, they took Nebraska to 5, but they still lost. And they also lost to Northwestern after being up 2-0, which you can't do that. I know Northwestern has some good players, even though they lost a good number of players to other teams and whatnot, but I will say you just can't be losing to those teams. And I would not be surprised if Iowa challenged Purdue. I feel Iowa has what it takes to challenge some of the big dogs in the Big Ten. However, I would kind of pick Purdue just because Eva Hudson is not going to let her team lose 3 in a row. And then you also have Chloe Chicoine, as I've mentioned in the past. You also have Raven Colvin, who's legit too. So, in all honesty, for Purdue, I would pick them to win. But again, Iowa is not going to roll over. And another sneaky good matchup to watch for on Saturday, and I hate to really bring this up to those that don't really want to hear about this conference, but UC Santa Barbara at UC Davis is a sneaky good matchup. Why? Because those two could be undefeated in conference by the time those two teams play. However, the two teams actually have to make it to that matchup undefeated. Because if all goes wrong, then this is going to blow up in my face and it's going to age like milk. But for Santa Barbara, they are having a fantastic, fantastic season as they've only lost 2 matches. One was to Oregon, which is no shame in losing to, and the other was to Drake, which I don't know what happened when it came to losing to that team following an amazing win over Iowa State. But also, UC Santa Barbara plays UC Riverside 2 days before they play Davis. And that's a long road trip up to Davis. And I imagine they're going to be traveling up there either probably Friday. Look, I'm no travel agent, but I imagine you're probably traveling up there Friday and then practicing in their gymnasium that same day and whatnot. So I'm no coach and whatnot, but I think that's kind of the game plan, but it is what it is. And then if both teams are undefeated in conference play by the time these two teams face one another, then awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing those two teams face one another. However, for Davis, they have themselves a gigantic matchup on their hands before they host UC Santa Barbara, as they host Cal Poly. Now, Cal Poly, here's the thing. Ever since they lost in 5 sets to Long Beach State, they've won their last 3 matchups. However, they've been ugly wins. They had to reverse sweep UC San Diego the day after they lost to Long Beach State. They had to reverse sweep UC Irvine last Friday, and they beat Cal State Fullerton in 4 sets. My thing is this for Cal Poly. They've got some good players, like Tommy Stockham to name one. But can they really be consistent when they face kind of their mere reflection? Because Davis was kind of the same thing when opening up conference play. They had to reverse sweep Cal State Fullerton and UC Irvine on the road to start off conference play. And then last week they had to go 4 sets with Cal State Bakersfield and CSUN, a.k.a. Cal State Northridge. Now Davis finally gets to host a Big West Conference match against Cal Poly, and I can imagine there are going to be fans that are excited and giddy to finally see UC Davis after 4 straight conference matches being on the road. So, in all honesty, for UC Davis, this is a big week for them, because if they can go 2-0 this week, that's huge. They'll be all alone in first place for starters, but they'll definitely be legit just because, well, you have a gauntlet on your hands going forward. You've got Cal Poly and Santa Barbara this week. You're at Long Beach State next week, then at UC San Diego the following that Long Beach State match. And then Tuesday, you're hosting Hawaii. That is a tough 5-game slate right there. So they've kind of gotten the, I wouldn't say cupcakes out of the way, but they've kind of got the lower part of the coaches' poll out of the way. Now they got to really prove themselves. And if Davis can prove themselves, then those Aggies might be a problem come Big West Conference play, come Big West Conference tournament time. And I saw Davis, they've got some scrappers on their team. They don't really let that ball drop easily. And they serve pretty tough, and Dan Connors does a pretty good job coaching. If I wasn't so busy, I'd maybe see Long Beach State and UC Davis do battle with one another. But it's unfortunate that I do. that I am busy that following week. But it is what it is. All right, that is it for Saturday's matchups. And then Sunday, let's just close off the matches to watch for. Number 3, Stanford at number 4, Washington State. This is without a doubt my match of the week. And gosh dang it, this is going to be the barn burner to end all barn burners. First place in the Pac-12. And man, Washington State, it seems like every week is another, you really got to prove yourself. Last week they proved themselves against Oregon. Now they got to prove themselves at home in Pullman against Stanford. And I'm going to 100% predict this, and I'm 95% certain this is going to happen. Pullman is going to be rocking because you're facing the number 3 team. Your team is number 4 in the nation. If I'm a Washington State fan, I am excited, and I am buying so much stock that I am bankrupt at this point. Like, you got to buy stock into Washington State women's volleyball because they are the real deal, and I got to give a tip of the cap to Jen Greeny. She's done an outstanding job, and with the players that she has, this could legit be a sneaky good contender. I'm not trying to crown them right away because you obviously have Nebraska and Wisconsin as probably some of the favorites to win the national championship. I know I'm using the term national championship so early, but you really got to look at contenders and possible pretenders. And I think Washington State is a contender. Now they have to really prove that theory this weekend at home against Stanford. And if they do so, Washington State might be thinking Pac-12 championship. And honestly, if they win the Pac-12, then boy howdy, good for them. Because we don't know what's going to happen with Washington State and Oregon State because everyone and their mommies is leaving for the Big Ten and the Big 12 and the ACC and whatnot. So, yeah. But I'm really excited for that matchup. My only wish is I wish that matchup was on national TV, like actual national TV, like ESPN or ESPN2 at the very least. Like, we got to get that on national TV. Like, please, ESPN, flex that matchup. But I guess it's too late now because it's a week in advance. It's less than a week in advance. All right, but that's that for all the matchups to watch for. If I missed any matchups, do let me know, and you're welcome to chew me out in a nice, respectful way. As before I reflect on 4 years of Set Point, I actually had a little bit of a... Okay, so this isn't really to call out somebody, but our friend of the show, Robert Evans, that I just mentioned earlier in the show, first and foremost, I appreciate you and your support of listening to Set Point. And he did listen to Set Point last week, but he did catch a moment where I was blanking on Nebraska and I couldn't remember their name when I was talking about Wisconsin and Nebraska eventually possibly meeting one another as undefeateds in Big Ten Conference play. Now, I understand, Robert, you kind of got a little bit of a laugh on that one, and I understand I will have my mess-ups, but I'm just going to tell it to you like it is. And for anyone else, it's high time you all listen to this, because if you all thought my mess-up on Nebraska was bad, prepare to be blown away, because this is the 4-year anniversary special of Set Point. I mean, we got to go all the way back to September 30th, 2019, when I was a student at Cal State University, Long Beach, aka Long Beach State, and I was doing this on a Monday at 11 a.m., and I didn't know what to really think of. I didn't really have the proper equipment, and you're about to see firsthand how bad I was starting out. So you thought me tripping up on not remembering Nebraska was bad? Listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. The first episode of Set Point and the introduction to that. Prepare yourselves.
What
What is up, everybody? My name is Teran Rodriguez, and this is the debut of Set Point, hosted by yours truly, Teran Rodriguez, which is me, of course. And good morning, Monday morning to you all. I hope you all had an amazing weekend. And yes, this is the debut of Set Point, where I'm going to be talking about NCAA women's volleyball, NCAA men's volleyball, and NCAA beach volleyball. With a little. All right, that's all you get. That's all you get. That is the first minute of Set Point, the first episode of Set Point. As you can tell, it was probably the worst quality day for me, as I was told I sounded a bit choppy in the beginning, and if you heard that 1 minute without your ears bleeding, kudos to you. But as I listened to that back, I was like, oh my god, I sounded horrible. What in the name of all things pizza is this? Why did I sound so terrible? Because compared to now, there's a major difference in that. But I do got to give a thank you to Robert Evans for for inspiring me to have that segment. Because I will admit, and I take major pride in this, I take lots of pride in trying to do this to the best of my ability, but I am going to mess up, and I'm going to blank on names. I'm going to blank on team names. I'm going to accidentally say, I'm going to probably mix up New Mexico State. I'm going to stutter. I'm going to repeat myself. I'm going to have a one-track mind. I'm going to have a lot of those moments. And as Daniel Gilman, my former guest on Set Point in the 5th season debut, he basically said it best. When you're recording for like 35 minutes going forward, it just sort of happens, because I'm eventually going to make mistakes, and I'm eventually going to have brain farts, and I'm going to have slip-ups and mess-ups. And I do remember getting called out for accidentally mistaking a fact, as I remember saying that Hawaii was going to be loaded for the next 2 years when most of their players were going to be back. And one Hawaii fan was nice enough. He didn't ultimately chew me out. He just said, sorry, but these Hawaii players are basically done after this season. This one, that one, this one, that one, this one, that one. And then these players have already graduated, blah, 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 blah. And these players might stay. So and that's the thing. I'm going to mess up, and I'm going to screw up, and if you just bear with me. And if you've bared with me for all 4 of these years, kudos. So I do want to, but once again, thank you to Robert Evans, friend of the show, for inspiring me to have that little segment right there. And if you've been with me through the first episode, which I highly doubt, because Set Point didn't really have a Twitter account back in episode 1, well, I give kudos to you. But let's take a little bit of a reflection on Set Point in the past 4 years. As I actually do want to acknowledge the chat room. Patty Baxter's in the chat room. She said, awesome interview. And then she said, memory lane. I'm sure it was better than her debut. Aw. Well, you did awesome. And I appreciate you being in the chat room, Patty Bax. Host of the Buffalo Huddle, which goes live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Pacific time, or 7 p.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. Pacific time. Davidson Crooks also pops in the chat room. He said, what's good? Larry B was also in the chat room as well. Mike Pat said happy anniversary, as well as Patty Bax. And he said that I was talking about his second alma mater, NC State, which, yes, I was. And you should be a proud alum of the NC State. I wonder what's going to happen when NC State plays Florida State in women's volleyball. And he also said, Teran out here jinxing everybody. I'm going to need that negative predictions about FSU. All right. Okay. All right, but back to memory lane here. I just want to acknowledge the chat room live. If you're also listening live, thank you. I do appreciate it. It means a lot. But let's reflect on 4 years of Set Point. Oh boy. It's been a ride, to say the least. Now, here's my thing. Set Point hasn't really been all that big. And honestly, it's not big. It's not gigantic big. And I don't expect it to be nationally big worldwide. But I will say this, for those that do continue to support me, I do want to thank you, especially to like the colleges that I attend when it comes to, or the college matches that I attend to, aka UC Irvine, Long Beach State, and a little Concordia University, Irvine. I really do appreciate you accommodating me and letting me attend the match so I can interview the coaches and possibly the players and whatnot. So my thing for Set Point is this. I really want to continue to make it grow, and obviously I'm going to have my screw-ups. I'm going to eventually make boo-boos along the way, and yeah, I will just say I'm not perfect, but I'm eventually going to do all that I can to continue to bring that volleyball content, whether it is the AVP, whether it's the NVA, whether it's NCAA, whether it's high school volleyball, heck, even JUCO volleyball. I'm still going to continue to do what I love when it comes to Set Point, because I basically said it best on my personal account. I said 4 years ago I started Set Point, and I didn't think it was going to really be big. I didn't think it was going to be big, and as some of you know, when I do like my 200 and 100 episode, I actually had thoughts of quitting Set Point and just not doing it anymore, just because I didn't think that it was going to be big, and I didn't think people would miss it. But look at me, I'm still here, and I'm happy doing what I do. And again, even if this isn't worldwide big, if this isn't massive big, I'm happy to do what I like to do. I've had many countless memories covering the NVA, covering the Big West Conference men's volleyball tournament, covering Long Beach State upset Texas on the first day of the NCAA women's volleyball season. I covered 2 undefeated high school girls volleyball teams playing for the state championship, which was very awesome sauce. And I'm also getting more comfortable with interviewing players on camera. I understand, and this is to all the athletes I've interviewed on camera, thank you to letting me interview you. I understand being filmed on camera is very uncomfortable, but I really do appreciate those that take time out of their post-game things and allowing me to interview you and whatnot. It really does mean a lot, and I really try to bring and grow and produce more content to my Instagram as well as the X account. But something that I've learned along the way is Daniel Gilman said it best. I gotta be more outspoken, and I gotta try to expand my horizons, and maybe, hence the word maybe, try to make it to the Final Four. But that's all the way down in Tampa, and airfare is going to be a lot, hotel is going to be a lot, AVCA convention is going to be a lot. Heaven knows if I actually go down there and do the AVCA convention, I will be doing that probably via StreamYard. I did try StreamYard one time with Set Point. It didn't work because my house is not webcam friendly. It's probably got it'll probably have boo-boo quality, but who knows? Maybe one day I'll do a StreamYard, aka live stream a Set Point via a camera. I know everyone loves visual over audio more, but I will say it's very tricky. So it's very tough. And Patty Back said it best in the chat room. You are well on your way. Follow your dream. And yes, I definitely want to continue to follow my dream because honestly, I would like to continue to cover volleyball and have this be like a profession of mine. Just cover volleyball, and whether it's like the AVP, whether it's like the NVA, which might be having more projects coming up in December, whether it's covering NCAA women's and men's and beach volleyball, whether it's covering high school volleyball, or whether it's even covering junior college volleyball. Honestly, I want to continue to grow the game of volleyball because I really like what I do. And heck, the late Kobe Bryant said it best. When you love what you do, you're never going to work a day in your life. Or someone loved that. Or something along those lines. He didn't really say it like that, but he did say that as long as you love what you do, you will never be unhappy and whatnot. And I love what I do, even though this isn't like superstar status. I do get recognized by some people. Some people are saying, hey, you're that set point guy, or I really do appreciate all that you do. Because just like what happened when Katey Thompson gets the compliments from parents and fans and whatnot saying you do a great job of coaching, when people tell me you do a great job of doing set point and you do a great job of content and whatnot, it really means a lot. And when people tell me you do a great job of your articles, or when people make note of my articles, like Nick England did when I talked about the San Diego Wild in the playoff preview, it really means a lot. It means people are actually looking at it, and people are taking time out of their busy schedule to basically look at my content that I produced. And it really means a lot. And whether you're judging me because I couldn't remember your team name or a player name or anything of that sort, or you're correcting me because I said something that isn't correct, or anything of that sort of thing, I really do appreciate it. It just shows that you are taking time out of your day to listen and basically tell me, hey, you gotta make sure this doesn't happen. And I promise you I will do my best to make sure no mistakes happen in the near future. Obviously, I'm only human. I can't really control myself in terms of me not making a mistake, because eventually you're going to make that mistake. And this is future podcasters. And I'm not really the best example to lead by, but I will say this. For future podcasters, or for those that do want to continue to do a show, or that want to do a show, first of all, be comfortable. Second of all, have the right equipment. Third, just be you. And fourth, you're eventually going to make that mistake. You're eventually going to mistake New Mexico for New Mexico State. You're going to accidentally say Nevada instead of Nebraska. You're going to say UC Santa Barbara instead of UC Davis, or UC Irvine, or UC Riverside. You're going to make those mistakes along the way. It's just all about picking yourself up and training yourself to make sure you try not to make that mistake again. For me, obviously, I will do my best to try to make sure I don't foul up in the near future. And for those that bear with me when it comes to my mistakes every single week and my brain farts and whatnot, thank you. I really do appreciate it. And again, here's hoping I do have the one true perfect show, though I highly doubt I'll ever have that show. And eventually, I hope Set Point becomes so big I can finally quit working grocery. Yes, for those that don't know, I do work retail, which is a pain in the neck sometimes. And all I really want is to be in the sports journalism media profession. Kind of like Emily Eamon or Daniel Gilman or Michaela Chester or any of that sort. But I want to basically grow Set Point. And if it means, I would say this in a negative way, if it means having to eventually have Set Point be partnered with someone else, then so be it. But I wouldn't want to leave IE Sports Radio ultimately in the dust, because Set Point would not be where it's at without IE Sports Radio, especially Larry B. I have to give him a shout out as well. Larry B, I don't know if you're still listening, but I really do appreciate you giving me this shot, because, fun fact, I was actually the co-host for our baseball show, Bases Loaded, back when it was still on, and then eventually that didn't work out for me. Then I was Larry B's co-host for The Defining Moment and for 3 and Out College Edition. Those kind of didn't really work out, except I kind of am still the co-host of College Edition. But I talked with Larry, and I was like, well, what am I going to be the host of? It's like, I'm not going to be able to podcast like you recruited me to. And he's like, well, you know so much about volleyball. Why not have a volleyball show? It's like, okay. So eventually that's how Set Point got its way. And I've had numerous guests like Alan Knipe, the Long Beach State men's volleyball head coach, John Speraw, the UCLA men's volleyball head coach and Team USA men's volleyball head coach, Daniel Gilman, like I mentioned a lot, Emily Eamon, I had her all the way back in 2020, or actually 2021. The list goes on. And without Set Point, I don't think I would have gotten a chance at the NVA, because some people were actually listening. Some people from the NBA, the players and the coaches and the authorized personnel from the NBA, were actually listening to Set Point, and they were like, huh, that's awesome. And when I had Nick England on, a lot of people were listening, and then they were like, I actually want to be a guest. And thank you, Carlo Edra, for being a guest on Set Point. That means a lot. So I've had lots of amazing guests. I've made lots of countless friends and whatnot, and I've had countless memories of Set Point that I really want to continue to do what I want to do, and I'm never going to really abandon Set Point. The only way I kind of abandon Set Point is if it becomes big, and then I eventually have to upgrade it to, like, the big stage, like, if it's partnered with, like, the AVCA or NCAA or whatnot. But I'm going to cross that bridge when I get there. If I get there. When I get there. Yes, when I get there. Think positive. But on that note, that is going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. If you're listening live on IE Sports Radio, Where You At Sports Chat with Joey Haggart is coming up. But it is that time to drop the beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? And that's something I also forgot to mention. As I continued to do Set Point, I finally got, like, catchphrases, like drop the beat and dip like a banana in chocolate, and then I eventually found the whole hand me a volleyball, set up the net, because I'm about to dip like a bit, or I'm about to serve you up some volleyball action on Set Point. But you get what I mean. But that's going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen at any time, any place, anywhere, I truly appreciate you. Shout out to Patty Bax, Davidson Crooks, Larry B, and man Mike Pat in the chat room. I really do appreciate y'all tuning in. It really means a lot. Huge thank you once again to Katey Thompson, my guest. She was phenomenal, and like I said, I wouldn't want to have anyone else on as a guest. No offense to any future guests that are on, that eventually will be on here. But this weekend, I will be back for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Also this weekend, I will be at Redondo Union High School for the Redondo Power Classic, hosted by Redondo Union. And honestly, I look forward to it. Unfortunately, I couldn't really preview it because no teams were released. But all I can tell you is that Miracosta and Redondo Union are hosting, and they're both really good teams. For my guest, Katey Thompson, and for everyone at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have yourself a great rest of the weekend. Be safe, be well. I will see you all on Friday for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Peace, and thank you for the support.